My daughter left her 5-year-old autistic son at my door and never came back. That was 11 years ago. I still remember the sound of her car peeling out of my driveway, fast, desperate, like she couldn't wait another second to escape the child she created. Ethan was standing there, clutching a dinosaur backpack too small for his shoulders, staring at me like he'd done something wrong. He hadn't. The wrong one was already halfway down the street, practicing her excuses for a day she thought would never come. I took him inside, fed him, bathed him, put him to sleep. He didn't cry. That was the part that broke me. He just curled under the blanket as if disappearing quietly was something he'd learned young. Rachel texted me 2 days later. "Mom, don't freak out, I just need space." Then nothing. Weeks stretched into months. Months hardened into years. I stopped expecting the phone to ring. Raising Ethan wasn't easy, not because of him, never him, but because the world is built like a maze and kids like him are expected to navigate it blindfolded. He was sensitive to noise, had trouble with sudden changes, memorized entire maps but struggled looking strangers in the eye. He lined up everything he owned in perfectly straight rows. I used to step over his toy soldiers like they were landmines. But he was brilliant, brilliant like a storm, brilliant in ways that scared people who didn't understand. He devoured books, dismantled clocks, solved puzzles faster than adults. Teachers whispered words like gifted, exceptional, and once, by accident, intimidating. He grew, and so did the silence around Rachel's absence. She didn't send money, she didn't call on birthdays. She didn't ask what his favorite food was, or that he hated tags on shirts, or that loud laughter made him flinch. She didn't know he built entire cities out of paper. She didn't know he called Saturn the pretty one. She didn't know he'd hug me only when the world felt too sharp to touch. She didn't know him at all, but I did. I knew every inch of the boy she abandoned. And I never resented him for what she did. When he was 12, his therapist suggested an evaluation for high-functioning autism. Rachel wasn't there. She wasn't there for anything. And I didn't waste tears for a woman who could vanish so cleanly she didn't even leave footprints. Then, one day, out of nowhere, she reappeared. It was a Tuesday. I opened the door expecting a package. Instead, I found Rachel standing there in expensive clothes, clutching a handbag like a shield. She looked polished, confident, like someone who had rebuilt a personality without including motherhood in the blueprint. "Mom," she said softly, "we need to talk." I didn't hug her. I didn't invite her in. I just stared, waiting to see which lie she was going to lead with. She smiled the way liars smile when they underestimate you. "I'm ready to be Ethan's mother again." Ready? As if motherhood were a light switch she could simply flip on after 11 years of blackout. Before I even spoke, I sensed it, something cold behind her eyes, something calculated, something hungry. I didn't know what she wanted yet, but I knew this: she didn't come back for love, and she definitely didn't come back for Ethan. She came back for something much bigger. Rachel walked into my living room like she owned the place. She didn't ask permission. She didn't care. She sat down on my sofa, and crossed her legs like a woman making a business offer, not a mother returning from the dead. "Mom," she began, "I think it's time Ethan comes back to me." The audacity made me dizzy. "Back to you," I repeated. "You left him at my door like a bag of groceries." She flinched, only slightly. I was overwhelmed. "You were 26, I said. "Not 16, not scared, not alone, just selfish." She inhaled sharply as if wounded, but I knew what that expression was. It was rehearsed. She didn't come for forgiveness. She came to perform the victim. "It doesn't matter," she said. "What matters is I'm stable now. I have a job, I have a house, I have a fiancé. I can give Ethan the life he deserves." I let her finish because the more she talked, the clearer her intentions became. "And my fiancé," she added with a careful, almost trembling voice, "has a lawyer. A very good one. He says I have a strong case for regaining custody." There it was. Not a tear, not a single word of remorse. Just custody and lawyers and strategic phrases. "What changed?" I asked quietly. Her eyes flickered. She hadn't expected that question. "And nothing," she lied too fast. "I just miss him." She didn't even know what his favorite food was. She didn't know he had sensory meltdowns. She didn't know he panicked around strangers. She didn't know he still collected toy dinosaurs and lined them by color. "Greens, reds, blues, yellows. You miss him," I echoed. "Name one thing about him." Silence. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out, so I answered for her. "He hates fireworks. Garlic gives him hives." He only drinks from blue cups. He cries when dogs bark. He hums when he solves math. He doesn't look people in the eye unless he trusts them, and he hasn't trusted you for 11 years. She dropped her gaze, but then she smirked. Smirked, Mom, none of that matters legally. There it was, the greed crawling directly out of her. I leaned back, studying her face. She was too polished, too calm, too prepared. Why now? I asked again, sharper this time. Her jaw tightened. Fine, she snapped. I'm buying a house, a big one. My fiancé, Greg, thinks it'll look better on the loan documents if I have a dependent. Families get better terms, and besides, her smile curled like spoiled milk. Ethan's medical benefits could help with some of the expenses. There it was, pure naked exploitation. She wasn't here for motherhood, she was here for money, benefits, leverage. I stared at her, unblinking, letting the disgust rise unchecked. You want his autism, I said slowly, to reduce your mortgage? She looked annoyed, as if I had phrased it rudely. It's not like that. It's exactly like that. She folded her arms. You can't keep him, you're almost 60, you have health issues, you can't support him forever. That was the moment I understood she wasn't just delusional, she was dangerous. Rachel, I said softly, if you think you can just walk in here and uproot a child you abandoned, you're not only selfish, you're stupid. She stood abruptly. My lawyer will be in touch. I didn't stop her, I didn't argue. Arguing implies the other person has a chance. When the door shut behind her, I called Ethan downstairs. Grandma, he asked, rubbing his eyes. Who was that? I looked at him, my boy, my responsibility, my heart. That, I said, was someone trying to take what doesn't belong to her. The lawyer showed up 3 days later, wearing a suit so sharp it looked like it was trying to slice the air around him. He didn't knock like a decent human being, he knocked like someone serving an eviction notice. Mrs. Carter? He asked when I opened the door. No, I said, I'm Mrs. Hale. Rachel hasn't earned the right to put her name on me. He blinked, thrown off for half a second, only half. My name is Mr. Landon. I represent your daughter regarding the custody of her son. My son. Her son biologically, sure, but emotionally, practically, legally, morally, he was mine in every way that mattered. Come in, I said flatly. He followed me into the living room, taking in everything: Ethan's neatly stacked books, sensory toys, the weighted blanket on the armchair, the laminated communication cards. Things that proved real parenting had been happening here for years. Mr. Landon sat down, clicked open a leather folder, and began his performance. Mrs. Hale, my client intends to restore custody of her child. She has made significant improvements in her life. Stable housing, employment, therapy, engagement to a financially secure partner. Does he know she abandoned Ethan for over a decade? I interrupted. He paused, collected himself, and continued. Regardless, the court will want to see that you are capable of providing long-term care. You are approaching 60. There are questions regarding your income, your health, your ability to continue managing the challenges associated with raising a child on the spectrum. He said it calmly, as if reading a grocery list, as if dissecting my entire life was just a Tuesday errand. I stared at him, letting silence stretch until even his confidence faltered. Then I asked, did Rachel tell you why she left? He smiled politely, fake, slippery. Her emotional state at the time is irrelevant to the current proceedings. No, I said, leaning forward. Her emotional state is exactly the point. She left him because he was inconvenient. Because she wanted freedom. Because she couldn't be bothered to parent a child with special needs. Not then, not now. He flipped a page. My client claims she experienced postpartum depression. She abandoned him when he was 5. He froze. Just a flicker. 5, I repeated. Not 5 weeks, not 5 months, 5 years old. His jaw tightened. It was clear Rachel had left that detail out. Still, he pressed on. Legally, she is the mother. Legally, I echoed, she's a stranger. He straightened the papers, trying to recover his footing. Mrs. Hale, courts favor reunification. You need to understand that. No, I said calmly. Courts favor the child's best interest, and ripping Ethan from the only safe environment he's ever had is not in his best interest. He closed the folder like he was delivering a verdict. We will be filing for custody shortly. You will receive notice. I advise you to prepare. He stood, expecting me to crumble like some frail grandmother grateful for scraps of mercy. Instead, I walked him to the door. At the threshold, I looked him dead in the eye. Tell Rachel something for me, he hesitated. Yes, tell her I don't break and I don't lose. He blinked. The veneer cracked, just a hairline fracture, but enough to satisfy me. When he left, I exhaled shakily. Not from fear, but from rage so cold it could calcify. Then Ethan appeared in the hallway holding his blue cup. Grandma, that man was loud. I knelt down, smoothing his hair. He won't be back, I promised. Not without a fight. Rachel didn't wait long to escalate. People like her never do. When entitlement mixes with desperation, you get something volatile, and she was ready to explode. The custody papers arrived the next week, hand-delivered by a courier who looked apologetic, like he knew he was delivering poison. I signed for them without a word. The envelope was thick, too thick, not just a custody request, a strategy. I opened it at the kitchen table, the same place where Ethan lined up his cereal boxes by color every morning. The contrast stung. Inside were accusations, fabrications, an entire fantasy version of my life designed to paint me as unstable, unfit, incapable. Mrs. Hale is elderly and physically deteriorating. I run circles around half my church choir. She displays paranoid behavior. Careful is not paranoid, and careful is why I'm still standing. She has isolated Ethan socially. I didn't isolate him, I protected him. There's a difference Rachel wouldn't understand if it screamed in her ear. Then came the ugliest part. She has hindered Ethan's developmental opportunities to maintain control over him. Control me. The same grandmother who sat through every meltdown, every sleepless night, every appointment, every therapy session she refused to attend. She claimed I kept him from reaching his potential. Meanwhile, she couldn't even be bothered to remember his birthday. But Rachel wasn't acting alone. Her fiancé, Greg, a man I'd never met, had signed a supporting statement. He wrote paragraphs about concern for Ethan's well-being. He talked about structure, resources, opportunities. He talked like he'd met Ethan more than once. He hadn't met him at all. Then I found the picture clipped inside. A family photo. Rachel, Greg, and an empty space where Ethan would have been, like a missing puzzle piece they planned to force into their perfect frame. My fingers curled into the paper until it creased. They wanted to take Ethan. Modify him, polish him into an accessory. They had no idea who they were dealing with. Ethan came into the kitchen while I was still staring at the documents. He tilted his head the way he does when he's studying something. Grandma, is that bad news? I forced myself to breathe. No, sweetheart, I said, just someone trying to make things harder for us. He nodded, satisfied with that answer. Then he did what he always does when the world overwhelms him. He lined up his pencils. Yellow, green, blue, orange, perfect order, perfect calm. Watching him, I felt something burn deep inside me. Not fear, not even anger. Something older, meaner, stronger. I remembered the nights I lay beside him while he trembled from sensory overload. The mornings I practiced scripts with him for school. The afternoons we built cardboard cities. The years nobody else showed up. I had raised this boy from scared, silent, and abandoned to brilliant, stable, and loved. And Rachel thought she could traumatize him for a mortgage rate. I stood, grabbed my keys, and drove straight to the law office everyone warned me was too expensive. I didn't care. I wasn't fighting to win custody. I was fighting to make sure she never got another chance to hurt him. My attorney, Miss Adler, was sharp-eyed and sharper-tongued. After reading the documents, she leaned back in her chair and gave a short, cynical laugh. Well, she said, your daughter just declared war. War, yes, and I was done being polite. Courtrooms are colder than they look. Not because of the air conditioning, because of the people who walk into them thinking the world owes them something. Rachel strutted in wearing a cream suit, hair perfectly curled, her fiancé, Greg, adjusting her collar like she was about to receive an award. She didn't look at Ethan, she didn't even scan the room for him. She walked in with the entitlement of someone expecting applause. I sat quietly on my side of the room. Ethan beside me, eyes down, tapping a rhythm on the edge of his book, steady, controlled, familiar. He wasn't scared. He was anchoring himself, something Rachel never bothered to learn he needed. When Rachel finally noticed him, she put on the fakest smile I've ever seen. Hi, baby, she said softly, lifting her hand as if expecting him to run to her. He didn't look up, he didn't move. He didn't even twitch in her direction. Her smile cracked. Greg leaned in and whispered something in her ear, probably just stick to the script. But scripts don't work when the truth walks into a room. Miss Adler stood, spine straight as a blade. "We're ready to proceed, Your Honor." Rachel's lawyer, Mr. Landon, began his performance. Flowery words, dramatic phrases. The kind of speech meant to sway people with sentiment, not substance. "My client deeply regrets the circumstances that led to this separation. She is prepared to provide the structured, nurturing home that Ethan deserves." Structured? She couldn't structure her own life for a day. Nurturing. She hadn't held Ethan once in 11 years. Then came Rachel's turn. She stood, placed a hand dramatically on her chest, and delivered a trembling speech about healing, reconnection, and motherly instinct. Motherly instinct. She had walked away from her child and didn't look back long enough to remember his eye color. When she sat, her lawyer smiled like they'd already won. Miss Adler rose slowly, like a woman who knew she didn't need theatrics. "Your Honor," she said, "with your permission, I would like Ethan to speak." Rachel visibly brightened. Yes, this was her moment, her fantasy, her triumph. "Of course," she said. "He can tell everyone he wants his mom." Ethan stood. Small, quiet, steady, 12 years old, but with a mind sharper than any adult in the room. He didn't look at Rachel, he looked at the judge. He spoke softly, but every word cut with surgical accuracy. "I don't know her," he said. Rachel's face blanched. "She's a stranger." Her mouth opened, no sound. "She left me when I was little. Grandma stayed. Grandma learned me. Grandma makes the world quiet when it's too loud. Grandma helps me breathe." He finally looked at Rachel then, not with anger, not with fear, with emptiness. "I don't want to go with you," Rachel broke. "No, baby, you don't understand. I was sick. I was young. I didn't mean." But he wasn't listening. He had said enough. The judge cleared his throat. "Decision granted to the guardian, Mrs. Hale, full custody, permanently." It was over, not with fireworks, not with shouting, just truth. Rachel sank into her chair, shaking, mascara streaking. Greg dropped her hand. Her lawyer closed his folder like he'd rather be anywhere else. I held Ethan's hand. We walked out together. Outside, the sun was warm. Ethan leaned his head against my shoulder, his version of a hug. "Grandma," he asked. "Yes, sweetheart? Are we done now?" I smiled. "Yes, we're done. But what Rachel does next, that's another story."